Yeah, I'm ready.
Hi, this is Eddie with a Mindful Emergence, and today I'm going to have a conversation with Dave Metz. And I'm going to let Dave introduce himself in just a moment. But I've known Dave for some time now, and in this conversation, we want to explore cannabis as a spiritual ally, as a spiritual tool, this amazing plant, how it's been used historically, how we can use it now, and really spend a little time and dig into this topic. So, Dave, what would it be helpful for people to know about you and your background with plant medicine and so on?
Oh, hi, everybody. It's good to be here today, Eddie, and thank you for having me on your show again.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess what people might like to know is that I've been involved with the psychedelic world for over 20 years and have spent a lot of time in places like Peru and, some time in Mexico and different places exploring, with my indigenous teachers. Which a shout out to them. Thank you to all of their wisdom and information and guidance. Um, and that has always been my approach to any plants across the board. Is how do we work with these in more of a indigenous way? These plants are here to help us and to guide us and to incite wisdom and their intelligence with us. And that's always been the way I've perceived it. This field of work and how we're affected by these plants and how they work with us, because it's not just us gleaning things from them, which we are, but we're also helping to be stewards for them as well. Like having good practices, like planting more plants when know you use one ayahuasca vine, put in three, in the ground,
Hmm.
things like that, having respect and reciprocity, in this world for, it's a good way to, create balance. And balance these days is something, the world really needs. So that's just this one little way to do that.
So,
I'm also an herbalist, and I've also studied Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, to a certain extent, and different massage practices, and a lot of energetic practices over the years, and all these different things, and sort of combine them together and in whatever it is that I know now, my oeuvre of information. And that's it just I just became who I was, through bringing it all together,
and we'll
kind of
talk a
like
little
the
bit later
entourage.
about your training with the Center for Medicinal Mindfulness when we get into that topic. So you mentioned ayahuasca. What are some of the other plants that you've used for spiritual practice?
Let's see, well, mushrooms, peyote, um, and obviously cannabis. And
Yep.
those are the main ones right now. A couple of, very little synthetics. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with those in the world these days.
Hmm.
Uh, don't necessarily have anything against that, but I've always sort of kept to, natural and plant-based work.
Hmm.
Um, those are the main ones I've used. I've also worked with plants in a more homeopathic and also plant spirit essence type work as well. Where you would put a plant in a bowl, in a glass bowl, and let it sit in the sun for 8 hours, and the water takes on the essence of that plant, and flower essences. Those are very subtle, but can be very powerful as well.
Hmm.
So, and so studied in all these different realms of different ways to work with plants.
Well, when I first met you, what really caught my ear, was your knowledge of cannabis. And I remember saying that I know a guy who knows more about cannabis than anybody else I know. And I've met a couple of people since then that probably are on your level. But what is it about cannabis that's held an appeal to you?
Well, it's always felt very enlightening. Every time I would use and be with this plant spirit of cannabis, I would, if I was looking for it, I would get information that was very clear, very precise, and very deep, and just cut to the chase. It's like,
Hmm.
well, just don't do that. It could be really blatant and blunt, but very gentle all at the same time. So I feel like it has a very feminine spirit, a very feminine essence. It can be extremely helpful for people, just set an intention ahead of time and sit down and smoke, like you probably talked about in some of your videos with the meditation. Um, that how deep it can take you, how obvious the answers can be to certain questions that you can bring to this plant, and I think it really helps. That's some of the main reasons, why I've been drawn to this plant. And it's accessible, it's available. It With this whole THCA loophole in states where it hasn't been legal, now it's kind of legal. And we'll see where that takes us in the future here. But hopefully, it stays the way it is now, or with some better regulation, perhaps. Um, and First, a big chunk of what we'll be talking about today, the more of a spiritual and slash psychedelic viewpoint of using this plant. When I first saw my teacher Daniel McQueen's book called Psychedelic Cannabis, which he just happens to happen right there,
With
um,
with my
he
little
was a big
tabs,
influence.
because I have all these
Yeah,
important points in here.
all those. Yeah, there was a lot of good information in that book. It's a new way of using this plant that's brought more, from a Western viewpoint, which I deeply appreciated. And I saw that book, and it just intrigued me. I got it almost immediately, read the book, and then went to, get involved in his programs out in Colorado. Um, and it was great. It brings in a mindfulness Buddhist approach, brings in a trauma informed approach to using this plant, and how to work with this particular spirit, um, you know, for deeper emotional and spiritual energetic healing work in the same ways you would use, ayahuasca or mushrooms in a ceremonial setting. So, and it works just as
Oh,
well. People have had, amazing experiences, very deep, very psychedelic with visuals and very deep somatic, experiences, releasing things. But it's all done in a, it's easier to move through the body, say, than something like ayahuasca is.
oh yeah,
Can be a little harder.
yeah.
Um,
That's the one thing
People's
that struck me
experiences.
about you is I know that you've done ayahuasca hundreds of times. And
Mhm.
in a lot of people who have gotten into ayahuasca, grandmother, or some of these other practices like 5-MeO DMT and San Pedro, which is, of course is a cactus that has mescaline. A lot of them kind of look down on cannabis, some of them, and see
Yeah.
cannabis as sort of the ugly stepsister, like, well, that's just weed, that's the reference we've
Mhm.
used off camera, the stoner in the basement watching Beavis and Butthead eating chips,
Right.
and that's a bad
Yeah.
rap and it's unfair. So I was struck me
Yeah.
that you had so much experience with ayahuasca, which is this really powerful experience, and yet cannabis is so important to you.
It's true.
Yeah,
And I can't fully explain why. There's just a draw.
yeah,
Um, it's yeah. We can, people change, people's perceptions change, people's ideas change.
yeah.
New things come on board, new downloads, new shifts in our
Mhm.
world, and that was, kind of, I guess that was a, paradigm shift for me.
Yeah. Let's talk about
And
some.
being
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, Oh, and I was just going to say that being trained as a person that's a practitioner slash facilitator for something like that intrigued me heavily. I'm like, oh wow, I can do what I've been kind of really oriented towards with the other plants, especially ayahuasca and San Pedro, but I can do it with cannabis as well,
Well, let's go ahead
and
and
be a
pull that
facilitator.
thread. Talk about your conscious cannabis circles and how that works.
Well, first, I'd like to acknowledge Daniel McQueen, my teacher who wrote that book, as being the influence for this, and I'm mostly taking um, his way of doing things in a ceremonial group setting, and embellishing with my own, training and my own background, which was heavily influenced by various plant medicines, like we talked about, and also the Andean Paco Cuna traditions. So the high Andes, those traditions as well. So all of my years working with those folks in various places in the world and here in the United States, have been brought together with what I'm bringing, forth. So it's I do some prayer work at the beginning, bringing in various different, seven direction prayers and kind of connecting all those dots together, and because it's all connected, as the indigenous people would say, and as they would say in Buddhism, what is that? The codependent co-originate. Wait, dependent co-origination, is that the correct terminology?
Yes,
Um,
basically.
yeah, for everything being connected, and so there's some crossover right there. Um, and I, as I've grown with this, been able to get deeper in my own body, and then been able to use body scans, and similar to like a yoga nidra practices, and similar body scans they would also use in mindfulness practices as well, to get us deeper into the body, starting from the toes, moving up through the body, and also creating more cosmic and earth-based connections out into the out into the universe, out to the galaxies, taking people to what is the medicine out there, what experiences do we have in those places when you can project your consciousness out into the center of the universe. What is that like? What medicine can we bring back? What experiences are out there? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What is um how does that affect us? And the same thing with going into the earth, going to the center of the earth, going through all the layers of the earth and the different minerals and the rock layers and things like that. And what does the earth have to teach us? What does that feel like? Is it warm? Is it cold? All these kinds of things. And when we do these practices like that, we get more in tune with the earth. We get more in tune with the cosmos, which is, big medicine for, all this, or it can be. Um, how do we connect with the animal spirits and the plant spirits, and bringing all these things together as a big way to connect to the earth, and which is what we really need to be doing right now, in my opinion, to connect more deeply with these ways of being. I call them more indigenous ways, along with the Western ways, and when we can bring those together, I think we'll have a really good system to kind of um, help the earth. Help. How do we help the people and the earth all at the same time? And my teachers in the Andes, they call this the Pachacuti, meaning the world turns upside down. And, fact is fiction, fiction is fact. We don't, it's very confusing times. And how do we stay stabilized in the midst of the storm,
Yeah. The
which is
Buddhists
what
say
meditation is all about.
emptiness is form and form is emptiness.
Hmm. And as above, so below, all these things. And, another, um, the hermetic traditions bring through those types of things, and it's all connected, and
Well, explain the
right now
setting.
that's
How,
important.
how do you set this up? Like, I've done it several
Mhm.
times with you, and you
Mm.
do it at different places, but typically the consistency is you go, group lies down. First of all, you explain things before you get started,
Right.
right? Then you go
Right.
and you lie down. And now the ones that I've gone to, you've had David Heiss doing the gongs and the sound. Talk a little bit about that arc that people would go through.
Well, okay.
I mean, you
So
kind of
once I start
started
with
it with
the,
the body scan and all that, but
yeah. Well, the music, the gongs especially, are huge medicine alone by
oh, yeah.
themselves. So you make that connection between the medicine and that enhancement that helps the medicine of the sound go much deeper.
Hmm.
People talk about opening up internal portals and things like that, external portals, and we've had I don't know, we've had experiences with like a disembodied voices speaking to us through the ceiling.
I know.
Things like that happen through this combination. It's really powerful work.
Oh, yeah.
And when you bring it in with connecting to the earth and the sky and the plants and the animals and our what are the beings that live in more of the spiritual high realms? What are the beings that live in the lower kind of earthly realms? And all of it's all brought in a safe manner.
Mm.
The space is cleansed and it's held tight. Where there's people sitting and helping guarding the space. Um, and so it's held just in the way any other
The
plant
ceremony.
medicine
It's a
would be
ceremony.
held.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the medicine itself, talk about the alchemy blend and why that's important, what it is, and how that works, and the entourage
Okay.
effect.
Yes. All right. Well, this comes through Daniel, and the alchemy blend he calls it is well. Let me back up for a second. Like each strain of cannabis has what is called an entourage effect, and that is like the special blend of cannabinoids and terpenes that each plant contains. And each plant is different than the next plant, and the strains are different in their percentages of the terpenes and cannabinoids. And each plant has what is loosely termed, a sativa effect or an indica effect, and a lot of them are hybrid, somewhere in the middle. And so that combination creates this entourage effect in each plant slash strain specifically, because each plant can have a different, even in the same strain, each plant can be slightly different from the next. But when you bring multiple plant strains together, the entourage effect grows and gets bigger. So there's more terpenes, there's more cannabinoids, and they're all working synergistically together to create a larger entourage effect. Which what happens then is it gets deeper, it gets richer, it gets fuller, and just the general effect becomes more psychedelic because your mind is stimulated and your body is relaxed. So
Yeah.
and your heart is open. So the
Yeah.
sativa style plants will open up your mind, and the more indica plants will relax your body, and some of the hybrids will help open up your heart. And that effect creates a fairly deep psychedelic experience that can be both somatic and very visual at the same time with a heart open, emotional experience. A lot of these ceremonial works, it can be very emotional for a lot of people. There's a good amount of release and crying and things like that that can come up, and um, so it's very that's very common. Lots of tissues.
I've heard it, and you heard it too because you were there. People say
Yeah,
they had a bigger experience doing this with these various strains, and you used as much as 8 or 9 different strains to blend them, maybe more.
right.
They said they had a bigger experience than they did on traditional classic psychedelics.
Yeah.
It's very possible in the
Yeah.
right setting and going about it. So, why don't you just give us some information so we don't forget if somebody wants to find out about your groups, how do they reach you, Dave, when
Well, the
you run
best
your,
way is through the meetup groups is the best way.
okay.
There's the Asheville Cannabis, Entheogens, and Healing meetup group, and then there's also the Asheville Psychedelic Preparation and Integration meetup group. So going to those, through meetup.com is the best way to hear more about these events and to connect. And for now, as I said, this is completely 100% legal, and let's hope it stays that way for now
Yeah,
and well
exactly.
forever. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the history of this plant. This plant, cannabis, has been used for thousands of years in spiritual practices. I'm not an expert on this, but I know that I have learned that they have evidence, direct evidence, that it's used uh, 3,800, 3,800 BC in China. Okay. And then in India, in the Indian subcontinent, going back to 1500 BC. Now, that's documented evidence. It's probably gone back further than that. We know that it was used in the Taoist shrines in China regularly. We know that they found evidence in an 8th century Jewish temple that cannabis had been used in ceremony. I don't know about Buddhism. The one thing about Buddhism that's tricky is they have these precepts, and one of the precepts is the fifth precept specifically is not to use any intoxicants. And of course, cannabis can be used as an intoxicant. It can be used that way, and many people do. And so they discourage it, but yet there's this a lot of people, including myself, who relate to the Buddhist tradition and use Buddhist practices, who use cannabis and other plants intentionally. So this has been an area of tension within the Buddhist community now for well over a half century. But we know that a lot of them, in fact, there's a group that's called psychedelic Buddhism or something, where they're teaching how to use various medicines, especially 5-MeO-DMT, which of course is a whole nother matter. But it's just to show you that these plants are now becoming maybe more widely recognized within traditions. The Rastafarians, I know very little about that, but I know that cannabis is a sacrament in that. What do you know about that, Dave? The Rasta people.
Well, yeah. They perceive, you know, the cannabis to have a high level of intelligence and wisdom. They perceive it as, in my understanding, I know very little as well, but about them as a very feminine, mothering spirit um, that guides them on in their daily life. They have meditations with cannabis. They use like a coconut with like a stem, and they smoke out of that.
Hmm.
And it's they have a meditation, then they talk. And what came to them? What did they see? What did they dream about? Things, what information did they get? Similar to the way many tribal cultures work together in that a similar situation where they might say, "Oh, I had a dream about, hey, there's a storm coming. Oh, well, the pig herd is, close by today, so we should go
Hmm.
hunting." They get information on how to live in a easier, better or way. Oh, it's time to plant, so and so crops. That type of information. And how do we love people better? How do we one love, Bob Marley.
Hmm.
How do we connect and how do we treat each other in a good way? And they're vegetarian as well. So, how do we treat animals in a good way. And how do we keep our bodies healthy? What kind of food do we eat? How do we live in the best way possible? And that's some of the best information we can get
Mhm.
from all plant medicines. And my mission is to like try to get cannabis at the same level and have it given the same respect as some of these other plants,
Yeah.
such as mushrooms and ayahuasca, San Pedro,
Yeah.
peyote, iboga, perhaps.
And then what
Although
about Native
iboga is kind of a
Americans?
whole other ball game right there, but
Yeah.
um,
What about Native Americans? I mean, it's hard for me to believe. I haven't seen evidence. I haven't actually run across proof of where it's been used by Native Americans. I mean, obviously, Native Americans in the Southwest have used peyote, but it's hard for me to believe that Native Americans weren't smoking cannabis in for various reasons, including ceremony and some of the things you talked about, like when are the buffalo coming, or the bison, or whatever they call them. Do you
yeah,
know much about Native Americans and cannabis use?
cannabis. I think there's pretty, as far as I understand, there's pretty limited, knowledge around that. But it'd be hard for me to believe that it didn't get brought up from some place like Mexico. Um, the original terminology calling it marijuana was, racist.
Yeah,
You know, they used it as a racist trope, because they wanted it to sound a little perhaps ethnic or
yeah.
exotic or
Let's be clear, the Native
connected to.
Americans didn't do that. The people that were
Yeah,
stigmatized by the
no,
plant did that. Yeah.
right, right, exactly. But meaning that at least they recognize that the places south of the United States were using
Hmm.
cannabis, and they had connections to it, and they traded in it probably. So I would imagine that some of the more southern tribes probably had access.
Well, in
But
The indica strains, they grow in cooler weather. I mean, if you can
yeah,
grow indica in Afghanistan, I think you can grow
yeah.
it in Kansas, in Oklahoma, in Wyoming. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that they didn't pack that peace pipe with some cannabis at times. You know, it's hard for me to
I would like
believe,
to believe that's true,
you know.
but I can't say for sure. And I don't want to speak for them,
I know.
but it's possible. And
Yeah. So
I
we
think they
know
do have they understand the idea of the plant spirit medicine. They
absolutely.
get it,
Yeah.
and a lot of tribes, some tribes in South America are now starting to reintegrate cannabis into their practices,
Hmm.
such as the Hunicuin in Brazil. I mean, they're essentially an ayahuasca using tribe, but they're also now, I don't know how long they've been doing it and how modern that is, but they're very much bringing in smoking cannabis during their ceremonies. And so they're playing music, they're smoking, they're drinking ayahuasca. And other tribes in Brazil, in my understanding, Peru, no, not so much. Yeah.
They don't blend them, huh?
I had a teacher who just said, no, the two plants butt heads.
Hmm.
But then, why are these other tribal cultures using them and finding that they do work together and they don't butt heads? The Santo Daime Church is also, it's pretty modern. They've only been around about 100 years, but there's many different lineages of that church that originated in Brazil. So some lineages are very open to cannabis use during the ceremonies, and other lineages they aren't. So
Yeah.
it's very it's mixed.
Let's talk about how
And
cannabis plays with other medicines. So let's just
mhm.
go through a few and briefly discuss them, like cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms. Yes, no, play well together. How can they be used together, or can they?
Well, traditionally speaking, I have never heard them being used together. And I'm coming from more of a uh, Mexican traditional viewpoint,
The Mazatecs.
where they've the Mazateks. And as far as I know, they did not combine any of those together.
What about
But
your experience?
in my personal experience, the cannabis can help with the once you ingest the mushrooms, there can often be that kind of jittery,
Hmm.
wonky kind of feeling, and
A
it
little
can
bit of nausea
help.
sometimes.
Yeah, it can really help with that first hour or so, as that medicine settles in your body and calms down. And the same thing after at the end. You sort of come out of it, and then you have a similar, for me, um, kind of jittery, a little bit, perhaps an edgy feeling in a
Hmm.
sense, and it can help with that as well. Um, I wouldn't take large doses of
A little
mushrooms
bit.
with cannabis.
This is
Just
not the
maybe small.
time. This is not the time to
Yeah,
blend up 7 or 8 different strains and right. Just a
probably
little.
not.
Yeah.
Most likely, what would happen though is the cannabis might be overpowered by the mushrooms, perhaps if you take a large dose of mushrooms, and it would be probably hard to differentiate, what each each one is bringing to your experience.
Yeah.
That would be, how I would probably, experience that or see that.
I've also
But
heard
there's a place for it, though. I'd say.
I've also heard it used, people have used cannabis. They use it a lot on the come down on certain
Mhm.
medicines, like, for example, LSD, which
Mhm.
I know you probably have experience with it. I certainly have quite a bit. Sometimes the come down can be a little bumpy, and smoking a
Mhm.
little cannabis can smooth that out. I've heard that also for ketamine. And also
Yeah.
ibogaine, apparently in because ibogaine is rough. I mean, you talk about ayahuasca being a strong medicine. Ibogaine is also a strong medicine. I've heard it used to help when you're coming towards the end and you're coming off, and it can be kind of jittery. Have you heard that?
I've not heard it, but for iboga, but or ibogaine, but I could see how it might be very, very useful.
Hmm.
A lot of these are also individual,
Sure.
experimentation. It might work for some people, might not work for others. It
Yeah,
might reinvigorate the medicine a little bit. It might bring it back, so for a period of time. So if somebody's going to do that, I would have a sitter with them watching.
absolutely.
Okay, we don't want to jump right back into a big experience again because I think it has the potential to maybe bring some of
Hmm.
the bigger experience back for a period of time. So I would just be
Yeah.
safe and have somebody there in nearby
Yeah,
in
these aren't
case that does
toys.
happen.
These can be strong medicines. Yeah. So one of the
Yeah.
things that I get excited about, and I know you know this because we've talked about it before, is how cannabis, and this is true for some other medicines like psilocybin as well, but talking about cannabis, how it can be linked to certain spiritual practices. So one of the things I talk about in my videos frequently is that when I take cannabis, and it doesn't matter if I'm just taking a little puff off a single strain, I always sit for about 10 to 15 minutes quietly and meditate. And I got to tell you, it changes the whole arc of my experience. It's sort of like it levels everything up. And I've seen the difference. It's like the difference between, okay, I'm going to smoke a little cannabis and then go cook. The difference between that, I'm going to smoke a little cannabis, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes, then I'm going to go cook. It's more taking that time to meditate elevates the experience because I'm in
Yeah.
my body and I'm really paying attention to my mind and I'm really exploring what the plant gives me. It's so
Mhm.
beautiful with meditation.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure you've gotten messages.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. And
kinds of
it's so
messages.
interesting because there's different ways to meditate. Sometimes I do my
Mhm.
typical meditation, which is basically insight practice or what's known as Vipassana practice, where I'm basically
Right.
focusing on the breath and allowing my awareness to notice the arising and passing of experiences and thoughts pull me away and I let go. And I'm just sort of working with all of that in a compassionate, curious way. That's just one
Mhm.
way to meditate. I mean, there's tons of
Yeah.
meditations. You talked about this guy here, Stephen Gray, and his cannabis and spirituality.
Yeah.
His tradition is in the Vajrayana, which is the Tibetan tradition. And so obviously, and that's very different than the kind of practice I do, but he
Mhm.
says it's incredible, you know? And then he got yoga.
Yeah.
I put up a video, couple video this morning, and somebody already commented. They said they always smoke before they do yoga.
Well, yeah, Daniel refers to cannabis as being the most powerful somatic
Yeah,
psychedelic compared
yeah,
to everything. He's done
yeah,
it all,
yeah.
and that's his opinion. And I might agree. I mean, if you smoke a, a, a good amount, and lay down and really focus on your body, do like a yoga nidra type practice, put music and eye covering, you go deep. Just
Hmm.
and keep reminding yourself, go back to the body, go back to the body, go back to the body.
Hmm.
Because your mind can you know take advantage of you,
Now, I will
and
say this. When I smoke before
distract.
I do yoga, though, I don't plan
Mhm.
on doing like an hour and 15 minutes of it.
Mhm.
I do a
Yeah.
much shorter practice. Our friend Amy, who just moved to Panama,
Hmm.
she did this event, and LP, her partner, was doing the music and everything, and she was taking us through different movements, and it was great. And about half hour, 35, 40 minutes in, I was like, I just want to go to Shavasana. Now,
Hmm.
again, that's me. And you pointed out earlier, everyone's an individual. There may be
Right.
some people who are really energized, and it's like, yeah, I'm ready to do 2 or 3 hours of
Yeah.
this. But I think
Yeah.
whatever it is, it can apply to Qigong, Tai Chi, any of these kind of body-mind practices.
And you can, like any yoga asana, can be taken a little deeper because your body is just more flexible, you're more
Mhm.
pliable,
Yeah.
more relaxed, and you can feel where you need to take it more. You're just more aware of your body and what your body needs to do, and your body is talking to you, which is a form of being given messages.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's very useful. Ganja yoga is a big thing in
Oh,
certain
yeah.
places.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I know in California there's a lot of ganja yoga going on out there,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm all for it. Hey, it's great. I think it's a really useful skill. And maybe do it part of the time, maybe a third of the time, do it with enhanced with cannabis, and two-thirds without it, so you can use use what you learned when you were enhanced, and take that over to the other times when you're not enhanced in that way. Like, that's the integration practice. What do we learn? I mean, it's not just you sit down, meditate, and smoke, and that's it. There's what happens after. you know
Hmm.
what did you learn? What could you bring back with you?
Journaling would be
Trying to
good, wouldn't it?
remember
Journaling?
the information. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the integration practice. What do you learn when you take the mushrooms? What do you learn when you take the ayahuasca? How to bring it to your life and use it in your life. Um, this, and it's so much the plant of the people. That's what I like to call this plant. It is the plant of the people. It's great for meditation. It's great for yoga. It's great for some other practices where you can incorporate it with other plant medicines. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie when you're high. It's just, that you're having a good time. It's fun.
Yeah.
It can enhance in that. And how do we use it in more of a conscious manner, instead of just, you know,
Zoning out.
distracting yourself and, going out of your body, perhaps. But at certain times, that's even useful as well. which is why it's great for pain,
Yeah.
because you can kind of somewhat disassociate from the pain a little bit, and you perceive the pain from a different way. You're like, oh yeah, my knee hurts, but it's not messing with me in the same way that it did when I wasn't high.
I
You can
just
accept the
I
pain in
just
a
went
in a
through
different way.
that. You know, I've
Yeah,
had two
well,
surgeries lately, and
yeah,
it
and
was
you were able to deal
interesting
with the pain better, right?
because I was using it for pain management, and Margaret would say to me, "So, how are you feeling?" And I'd say, "Well, I noticed there's some discomfort there, but I have a different relationship with it than I had
Yeah.
before I smoked."
Hmm. Hmm. It's phenomenal for that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's
I
talk
think
about breath work. I know that
right.
when you do your conscious cannabis circles, and you bring in the music and the all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff, that one of the things that you invite people to do, along with your, yoga nidra and all these other things, is to use the breath. And of course, breath work is a big term. There's a lot of different kinds of breath works. I mean, pranayama is part of yoga, that's a breathing practice. But when I'm talking about breath work, I'm talking about something like the holotropic breath work that's been around since the early 70s. And I'll say this, Thursday night, Margaret did an online breathwork session, where she sends the music files out. People are home and they set up their
Hmm.
own arrangement where their eye mask and everything. And then she
Hmm.
sets it up and then we start the music. Well, she was doing, I said, well, I might as well do it. So I'm in the living room and I put on the headphones and the eye mask. But before then, I smoked some
Hmm.
really strong sativa,
Hmm.
green crack or Durban poison or something. And I meditated for about
Yeah.
15 minutes and then I started the music. Dave, by the time that I was tripping because I was doing
Hmm.
the full holotropic. So, for those of you watching this who don't know what holotropic breath work is, basically you're bringing in a particular type of breathing that's faster, deeper, and more continuous. It's an energetic type of breathing, and you're combining it with a specifically designed playlist of music, and the combination of the breath and the music takes you into an enhanced state. It was actually created in the 70s by someone who had been using LSD therapeutically, and when it became illegal, the Stan Groff we're talking about, he knew that indigenous people had used music and breath as well as plant medicine. So he created this form to help people go into expanded states without having to use psychedelics. But you bring in the medicine and it's like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. You go into the deep medicine space, like I like to call it.
Ah, I came
I've done
out,
it.
I came out of it,
Yeah.
and Margaret opened it up for sharing, and I'm just sitting there going, I don't even know if I can talk.
Yeah, no, combining it even with a gentle breath,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be holotropic. It could be a gentle,
yeah.
a square breath or any kind of breath, anything that enhances, any of those types of breaths. And one Daniel teaches is, a forceful in and like letting it drop out your
Uh-huh.
mouth. Like just release, relax, let
You
go.
keep repeating it.
Um,
That's pretty similar to the type of breathing that we would
yeah,
do for holotropic.
yeah, yeah, it's similar.
Yeah.
And that it takes it deeper. If you want a deeper somatic experience, I guarantee you that'll give it to you. It'll
Hmm.
take it up another 20-25%.
Hmm.
More visuals, more deeper experience in your body. And, you know, we also talk about these plants, when you go into a more creative space in your mind, more of a deeper experience in your body, what's the purpose of that? Um, how does that help us? And for people that have depression, that have anxiety, that have PTSD, CPTSD, any of these types of things where you would use these plant medicines, cannabis can come right in and do the same things. It makes you more of aware. Okay, I'm holding this, heavy kind of thing in my body. It doesn't feel good. Like, and it's down near my liver or something. The idea in these ceremonial situations, this goes across for any plants, and cannabis can do this as well. When you're in that deep enhanced place, especially if you've done the breathing,
Yeah.
you go into the spot, you scan your body. That's why we do a body scan, so you can get more familiar with what's going on in your body, what it's feeling. What are you feeling? Where and what does it feel like? Is there an emotion held in that place? What does it look like? Is there a color? Is there any visual that comes up when you focus on that spot?
How does it feel? Yeah.
Is it what's the texture? I mean, anything that can get you more in contact with like what's going on in your body. And then once you do that, and that because we all hold our traumas in our body,
Yeah.
as the famous book, "The Body Keeps the Score." Bessel van der Kolk. Everything that we've experienced is held in our body unless we've done specific work to get to release it. Depending on how you took it in, when it happened in the first place. You have the shock traumas, a car accident, or anything that just the shock that happens. You fall, have an accident, you fall off a ladder, any of these types of things. And then there's like complex CPTSD, where you were just sort of maybe you were bullied a little bit by a parent or in school or something like that. But it doesn't seem like a shock trauma, like an accident, but it's an accumulative kind of thing, and all this stuff gets held
Hmm.
um, unless you've done what the deer does, like Peter Levine would talk about. Okay,
Hmm.
the deer is chased by the lion, and when it outruns the lion, it sits down and shakes.
Yep.
It
Yep.
releases that adrenaline and that anxiety, that trauma, and then goes on about its business. Humans don't do that,
I will
or
tell
we've
you
been trained
this.
not to do that.
My personal history and the trauma that I experienced in my early 20s, and I won't go into it here, but it was pretty significant. And I've done a lot of different medicines, pretty much everything out there. The only I haven't done ibogaine, and I don't plan on doing it. Don't need to. But cannabis has helped me deal with and work with my past trauma more than anything else. And it's a little surprising to me when I first thought about it, but it's not. And the reason is that cannabis has a friendlier, I think you mentioned it's feminine energy. And I know ayahuasca is a feminine energy, but ayahuasca is, I found to be really so kind of overwhelming to me. It's hard for me to get the nuances, the somatic nuances. But with cannabis, I've been able to really notice how I get triggered, like from past memories, something happens, and then I like, oh, I can really just notice this tightness or this tension or this energy moving in my body. And I got that better than ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD, San Pedro, any of those other medicines.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like one of the main um, ways that meditation works. It slows everything down, right?
Hmm.
You can see when you're reacting to something much easier
Yep.
than just like in every day-to-day life. Just you respond, and instantly you're in a different place, than it's
Hmm.
uncomfortable, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you watch it happen when you're under the influence of cannabis, you can watch it unfold, and then you can like really work with what's happening in your body
Yeah.
and start directing your breath and your attention. Where attention flows, energy goes, right?
Hmm.
So you can direct the attention to those places of pain and discomfort and all those old spots where we're holding these things, and just allow them to move through and move out, and just with that attention and with the breath, directing your breath to those places.
Yeah.
And our breath is our friend, and breath is so powerful, and
Well,
combining it together
it's our
in
superpower.
these places is, yeah.
It's a superpower.
um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then working,
exactly.
noticing the thoughts, like I'm able to just observe, like, okay, what am I telling myself about this experience? What little story do I have? Is it even true? Let me create a little bit of
Right.
space, step back from this narrative I'm carrying about this, and really maybe I can see it in a different way.
And it is a narrative. It's, we're having a conversation with the cannabis. I mean, we're literally, like we're having a conversation right now. You could do the same thing with any plant medicine,
Yeah.
including cannabis, and she'll give you information. She'll tell you how it is. And like, yeah, maybe you don't need to do that. If you're, trying to figure out should I do something or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Just listen
I had a
to it. And
friend who just recently, said that had a teacher who she wanted to give, what might be perceived as negative feedback to this particular teacher, and then she decided against it because this teacher also already proved to themselves to get very upset when somebody gave them constructive criticism. And so the plant, cannabis was like, nah, you don't need to,
yeah.
subject yourself to that
Right.
anymore. You're done. Just let it go, drop it, move on. So it can give you like little helpful hints and tips to help us, just like I said earlier, be better people and to stop punishing ourselves and staying stuck in things that we don't need to stay stuck in. And she's like, yeah, you don't, I'll help you let that go.
Yeah.
um, and I'll give you very clear advice. Um, and this is our how we create relationship with these plant medicines. That's what it. That's the ultimate thing we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Create relationship with these plants, talk and communicate, and let
Mhm.
them show us what's going on for us, and um, how to go deeper in ourselves and how to love ourselves in a better way, and stop hurting ourselves, and showing us when we might be doing that, making it clear and making it obvious. Because in our day-to-day regular life, when we're not enhanced in these ways, we're so living in a habitual way
Mhm.
that we don't even see some of this stuff that we're doing, and coming from a different perspective is incredibly useful. um, so I recommend anybody who's open to this work, to look into it, to explore, to
Start out
if you
slow,
want to do
easy,
deeper
right?
work,
Start out
have your
slow and
friend there.
easy. Start out real
Hmm.
easy, right?
Yeah, go slow at the beginning, go low, go slow.
Yeah.
um, and maybe have a friend with you who you can trade back and forth. Okay, I'll
Hmm.
watch you for 2 hours, and then we'll do it tomorrow, and I'll watch you for 2 hours. And
Yeah.
because that creates a more ceremonial space. It creates a space of safety if you trust that person. And what I describe ahead of time before we even imbibe is what to do if you do get uncomfortable. And I've
Yeah.
made reference to certain things, but okay, start breathing into it, acknowledge what's going on, follow it. And if you need to have your hand held by the person being with you, your helper, your sitter, hold their hand. It's okay. It's good to ask for help. A lot of us have trouble asking for help and being vulnerable in that way. Then that's a huge step for a lot of people to ask in that, and in a ceremonial space, you raise your hand and say, help. I
Mm.
need help. And that's very, I can break down a lot of things for people, I think, just by being vulnerable in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's really useful, get music that you like. There's lots of, plant medicine playlists and things out there, and some are better than others. Get some soothing music and get some really driving, pushing music that's more percussive and moving. The first part of it could be that, like more journey type music, and then the second half can be more like relaxing. Hey, let's just sit in the void and feel what just happened and explore our bodies a little bit more. And these are just good hints and tips. And there's the classic set and setting as well.
Oh, yeah.
What is your mindset? What is the setting that you're in? Is the space safe? You might want to cleanse it a little, spray some rose water, use some sage or smudge, that type of thing. Get the space ready. Perhaps set up a little altar if that feels good to you. Make your own prayers to whatever it is you want to whomever, whatever that works for you, makes you feel safe and brings peace to your heart. All these types of things, and make it your own. It doesn't have to look like what I'm doing, especially if you're doing it in a personal way. And this you can create a practice around that. Do it once a week, do it once a month.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, when I smoke,
and I
before
think
I
it can be
smoke,
really useful.
there's a
Hmm.
few things I do before I smoke. One is I have my environment. In other words, okay, what am I going to do after I smoke? Or am I going to sit outside? Am I going to sit inside? Kind of get clear on that, have it ready, have it comfortable. And I also drink water if I'm smoking, sip
Hmm.
before you rip. Have you heard that expression? Sip
Yeah.
before you rip. Get the lube, and
Yeah.
then I also sometimes use a throat spray, like some honey.
Mhm.
But then
Yeah. Singer spray.
I thank the medicine. I look at the
Hmm.
medicine and I thank it, and I say, may this practice benefit myself and all beings. I set that
Right.
intention. I want this medicine to be a benefit to all beings. And then I smoke, and then usually within a minute, I may go to the bathroom first, but I'm in a minute, I'm in a meditate. I'm in a recliner. I don't have to sit cross-legged on a
Yeah.
cushion. I'm just in a
Yeah.
recliner and I just meditate for a while. And
Right.
then wherever else it takes me, it takes me. Maybe I'm cooking dinner. Maybe I'm having conversation with friends. Maybe I am watching something on TV,
Hmm.
whatever it is. But I started off with is a ceremony. Yeah.
Right.
Last thing, and then we'll wrap this up is do you have recommendations on the best ways to consume the medicine? Like, for example, I know there's edibles, there's drinks, there's gummies, there's obviously smoking, there's vaping, there's all different ways. Do you have tips that maybe you
Mm.
think are helpful for folks?
Well, the ceremonial work that I'm doing, and the way you're using it as well, is seems to be mostly through smoking or inhaling in some way. And the benefits of that are it's very quick and it's very strong and quick acting, and within, like you said, a minute or two you're in it. Um, and it spikes. Within 5 minutes you're peaking,
Hmm.
and you might stay at that peak for 20 minutes, half an hour, or something like that, and then it slowly dips down. That's pretty much the trajectory for vaporizing dry herb vaporizing or smoking flower, with a pipe, or a water pipe or something like that. Um, which I think that's a good way to do it, because it's a little less harsh on your throat if you have a sensitive throat, and like you mentioned, using a spray,
Hmm.
uh, you know, like a Singer spray. It has honey and aloe and things like that.
Yeah.
Those are pretty easy to come by. Just find a Singer spray somewhere, spray it in before you smoke a little bit. Um, so the water pipe is a little easier, a little gentler. Um, excuse me. Edibles like gummies and something like a tincture. Tincture is a slower come on, within 20 minutes to 45 minutes or so. And it can come on pretty quick and pretty fast, because if it's an alcohol tincture, it takes you into the bloodstream pretty fast. Um, but it will last a little longer than smoking, maybe closer to 2.5 hours. Gummies take a very long time to come on, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on what you have in your stomach, and each individual is different, and how strong the gummy is.
Is it Delta 9?
But
Is it Delta
certainly,
8? Yeah.
yeah.
Getting more
Well,
complicated.
personally, I stay away from like more like highly processed synthetic type stuff,
Same.
synthetic-ish, like Delta 8 and that type of thing. But it's all up to the person.
Hmm.
But the edibles, I think, can be good. You've always hear somebody, oh, I took way too much edibles, and they had a really hard, long experience, and Well, and if you ask them if that was psychedelic, and they would say absolutely 100% was psychedelic. Um, and that can go on for hours. So if you're not
Gummies,
ready for something like a big dose of an edible or gummy,
yeah.
yeah, be careful with the gummies because they do last a
Gummies
long.
can get complicated. I don't know how this
Yeah.
came into my possession. I think it was like a free gift bag that I got on
Mm.
420 day at this dispensary here, and there was a bottle, there was a jar with some gummies, and brace yourself. Each gummy was 100 milligrams. What the hell? You know what I do when I
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
gummy? 10. I do 10
Yeah.
milligrams.
And how does that make you feel?
That's plenty.
Yeah. Yeah.
10 is plenty.
Are you
I'm
in a
thinking,
place of having it be psychedelic at all, visual or any of
no,
that type of
no, it
thing?
just
Or
feels good. It's
yeah,
it's
you're deep.
not as intense as if
Yeah.
loaded up on some good flour, but I mean, I
Mhm.
feel good.
Yeah.
It
And you
has the
could use
desired
a gummy and then smoke on top of it. That's
Yeah,
a
I've done
combination
that.
that works
But my
pretty well.
point is, what if somebody like, oh, let me take a gummy and they take 100
Right.
milligrams? I mean, I can't believe they
Right.
even
Well,
put that
yeah.
on the market.
Well, that's where better regulation would be useful and very skilled and trained bud tenders
Yeah.
who can explain, okay, this is really strong. You might want to break it up into, eighths or something,
Yeah.
depending on who you are. So that can be tricky. And, that's probably a topic for another,
Yeah.
you know, YouTube
But it
video for
is.
you as
And on
the,
top of that, when you shook the jar, there's like all this sugar at the
Mhm.
bottom. And then I look at the
Yeah,
back
yeah,
and they got yellow dye number 40. I mean,
yeah,
I have it in my
yeah.
closet as like a demo thing to show people, don't do
Mhm.
this.
Which
Everything about this
maybe,
is like,
yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah, which is why maybe tinctures might be better.
Well, some gummies are
Unless
good,
they have a clean source of gummies, perhaps.
or
I've told
chocolate.
people, maybe you can wash the sugar off of it.
Well, there's
um,
a company locally called Sugar Creek. I'll give them a plug. And
mm,
they actually
mhm,
sell meat, but they also make these chocolate bars. And each
mm,
square is 10 milligrams. It's 100 milligrams. It's got 10 squares, or
mm,
maybe it's 80 and it's got eight. I don't know, but it's 10
right.
milligram squares, and it's real clean.
Mm.
It's got some sugar in it, but it doesn't have all that crap. That one is I'm okay with that one when I want an edible,
Well,
but
mhm.
most of the stuff out there is really nasty. You know,
Yeah, it's processed. And another thing to be aware of is it a full spectrum product or is it just Delta 9 straight up,
yeah, that's another.
which is could be synthetic, could be natural. And when you have a full spectrum product, that includes other cannabinoids and that includes terpenes. It's not only just Delta 9,
Yeah,
which does get you high, but it's lacking any of the nuance of like bringing in terpenes that make it more of an indica or a sativa, those types of things. That's all missing. But so getting gummies or edibles that have they're called full spectrum. That
yeah,
that's like based on a particular strain or something like that.
mm,
Um, I that would be my preference instead of just only Delta 9, which a lot of these drinks and things that are really popular these days, it's they just make a drink and pour some Delta 9 in there as well. And that's fine. But that that's just if you want to be more of a connoisseur or do you just want to like get high, there's different nuances here.
mm.
And one thing I did think of was a lot of people talk about I get paranoid, I get anxious when I'm high. That's something to broach, I think.
Talk about that. Yeah.
And one of the that's so it's what kept some people from coming to doing the ceremonial work. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And well, there's a couple things I could say about that. Well, you could try smoking only an indica, and we can work with somebody like that
Hmm.
in ceremony. If you come to something like that and just tell them, I get really anxious, I only want to do an indica, and if it's a good facilitator, they'll hear that and they'll work with you, and that's what they'll do. That's what they'll give you, and see if that works. But what I have found is when people in a ceremonial setting with the blend, the levels of anxiety are much less because the indica cancels out any of the negative impact of a sativa that could be more, anxious and anxiety producing. So it's a more of a balanced experience. And plus, when you're laying down and you're held in a ceremonial space and you feel safe, safety is huge. Okay, if anxiety comes up, there's people here that can help me.
Hmm.
There's people that know what they're doing. Then you can actually, instead of like, feeling bad and feeling anxious without knowing what to do about it, you're being held in a space where you can actually work with it, which is
Yeah,
much better than, getting anxiety and watching, an action movie or something.
yeah.
Um, that it would enhance it. So people can go deeper in their system and work, these are plant medicines. They bring up what's inside you. They show you what's going on for you. And if anxiety is coming up, that's, well, maybe you are a person that has a lot of anxiety.
Hmm.
That's not a bad thing. It's just like knowledge, it's experience. It's okay. How do I work with that now? I have this information. What do I do? What am I anxious about? What is, being more aware of that in your own body, in your own system. My anxiety ridden all the time, or does it only come up when I hear certain things or do certain things or talk to certain people, things like that. So, it makes those types of things more clear. Um,
Here's another
I just wanted to
suggestion.
broach that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all really good. Here's another suggestion for people
Mhm.
who worry about that is, and you know this, Dave, that all these different strains are getting hybridized. And one of the
Yeah.
things that a lot of growers are trying to do is hit these high
Mhm.
THC levels. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they go into a dispensary, they're chasing the big number. Oh, this one's got
Mhm.
23%. Oh, wait, this one's got 28. Whoa, this one's got 33%. What they
Right.
don't know is that maybe the one that had 21 or 23 is a better
Or
option,
15.
or even 15
Yeah.
or 18. And then this
Yeah.
is where certificates of analysis can come in, and you can look and see if there's any
Mhm.
CBD in it. Because Dave, you know this, they're because people are wanting the big high, a lot of them, they're not putting the CBD in these strains. They're hybridizing it out. And
Right.
CBD has a mitigating effect that's very helpful for
Mhm.
things, the anxiety. That's my understanding. So if somebody, they should not only go for an indica, but see if they can get a strain that's not so high in THC and something that's got some
Mhm.
CBD in it.
Yeah. Or buy straight up CBD flour and mix it in.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah,
Or take a CBD tincture, a half an hour beforehand,
yeah.
to kind of
So,
cut that edge a
yeah,
little
drop it
bit.
in. Yeah,
There's different things that you can be done, and a lot of those really high numbers are also, a lot of it's sort of rigged a little bit,
yeah, I know. Yeah,
because the growers like, oh yeah, they know that the big numbers sell. And so somehow the numbers can be skewed a little bit depending on
hmm,
how the COA is done and things like that, or depending on what batch of flour they send to the lab. It
yeah,
can be higher than others, and so there's people fudge this stuff a little bit, and that's where we are. And also another reason why to have it regulated in a better way.
yeah. We
And
need more regulation. We
um,
need to keep it legal and have better
mhm,
regulation. Absolutely.
right,
Well, Dave,
and not be reliant on.
we've been talking for
Oh.
quite a while, and this is all good stuff, but I think we should probably bring it to a close. I know I don't quite want to get into Joe Rogan, like 2 hour.
3 hour territory. Yeah.
Uh, I imagine some of the people that are watching this are going to chunk it up and watch it in sections, which kind of makes sense. But I'm so glad you suggested we take a deep dive and really explore cannabis as a spiritual tool because there's so much in there to talk about, so much to
Mhm.
cover. It's so rich, and I appreciate your input on it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Well, thank
uh,
you for having me, and I hope this information can help some people. And
yeah.
have a new appreciation for this plant that's been around for thousands and thousands of years and has been used in these ways for millennia,
It's a
as you
master
mentioned.
plant.
And
It's a master plant.
it is a master plant.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
why not respect her and why not praise her for that
Mm,
and use and bring her more deeply into our lives in a respectful manner with reciprocity.
yeah. Doesn't mean we
So
can't just
another,
we can't just doesn't mean we can't smoke a bowl and put on some Pink Floyd and eat some ice cream and enjoy that too.
absolutely. I think saucer full of secrets, perhaps.
That's right. There's time and a place for everything. Dave, thanks again.
Yeah,
And for those of you who stuck it through to the end, thanks for watching. Hope it was benefit. Love your comments. Drop them in there. And you can reach
yeah,
out to, if you want to reach Dave, just go ahead and contact me through the link that's
yeah.
in the description, and I'll make sure that, or you can go to Psychedelic Preparation and Integration on the Asheville Meetup group. Is that the correct way to direct?
Asheville psychedelic preparation and integration, and
Yes.
Asheville cannabis, entheogens, and healing.
Yeah.
Two different
So
meetup groups.
join the meetup groups, and Dave's doing some great stuff there. And thanks for watching.